point. Then there's also the noise contour considerations. So the turbines have to comply with the noise standard, and the noise standard outlines a 40 decibel noise limit, so that will produce basically a buffer around turbines, and that can typically be quite a bit more than a kilowatt. But that depends on context as to what distance that actually is.
The other question was to do with the town boundaries, correct? How close to the town boundary? Well, I'll put Mr. Moles on the spot here.
The answer's already been given. The town boundaries are relevant to the siting of the wind farm itself.
So it's a kilometre to the nearest house, and it takes into consideration the noise contours, irrespective of where the town boundary is. Right, next question, up the back.
Hi, my name is Catherine Webster. We have a farm that's right smack bang in the middle of a proposed wind farm. We actually have a gazetted airstrip there, and we've used that airstrip for the spreading of fertiliser for nearly 40 years. Now, we've already been told by our contractor that if that wind farm goes ahead, we won't be able to use the airstrip, or we won't use it. Now, with air pilots, they take off and land probably every 10 minutes spreading fertiliser. They have a significant payload. I've asked the developer what alternatives we can use for fertilising our farm. And I've never, this is over a period of years, I've never had a satisfactory answer from them. They just cannot answer that. And I was wondering whether these airstrips, rural airstrips, are taken into consideration in the planning process.
No, maybe. Commission.
Jim, can you stand up, please?
Yeah, of course. I might start an answer, and then maybe Andrew can finish off, because part of that is planning, and then part of that lies outside of planning. So there is an aviation impact assessment that needs to form part of the application, and that needs to take into account any impact on airstrips and aviation in the area. That doesn't necessarily take into account any agricultural aviation activities. But I think Andrew can then follow on from that as to requirements.
Yeah, so a couple of things. In the Victorian Planning Guideline, I think it's section 4.3.6 and 5.1.5, CASA must be consulted for a declared airfield. And if you've got a declared airfield, and we can talk offline about what constitutes that, then CASA needs to be consulted by the proponent during the planning process and provide one of those reports that Tim mentioned as part of the planning application. In terms of solving the problem also, if the wind farm is built, it depends on what the nature of the issue is. So in one particular wind farm, we work with the crop dusters so that the wind farm is turned off during the crop dusting period, so that you don't have rotating blades going on during the time of the crop dusting activity. And generally speaking, you can crop dust when there's not much wind, so there's no great impairment to the wind farm to be off during that time.
You have a question?
Yes, I have. His comment first, you've outlined, comment first, you've outlined various qualifications that have to be met with regards to the planning, permits and whatever. But you've only mentioned the noise, the visual impacts and whatever. Nothing is mentioned about the social or economic impacts. I have in front of me only socio-economic assessment made by Union Canosa. And in that it said that the planning guidelines require an assessment of the economic and social impacts related to the suitability of the site. Only ever one report was made. Comments that you made, Andrew, in some of your reports suggest that with any amendment, if the amendment is such that the proposal is for much larger, as opposed to what you said, Tim, nothing. That any amendments to size and positioning of them is not part of the amendment to proceed to speak to people in the community. You've suggested that they should. So there's a bit of a difference between the two of you there, you're opposing each other about what has to be done. In the socio-economic statement, they're talking about the methodology, that the assessment is focused on developing a general profile of the Shire economy. The majority of things will be shown on a local Shire level, but nothing, not one instant was anything mentioned about the socio or economic problems that are going to happen in Hawkesdale. When I spoke to Rhiannon and Eddie, and I asked her, was there ever a report made specifically on the town that's 1 kilometre from the proposed site? In this it said that the whole thing was in an agricultural area only, no mention of Hawkesdale. And when I asked her, where is the report? Have you ever been asked to make a report on the effects on Hawkesdale? She said, it's all in the centre of the report. I have the report here. You can get, I'm keeping this, I've got all my notes on there. There's not one scintilla of information about what's going to affect Hawkesdale. And I'll ask another question a little bit later on, specifically telling you what those economic reports will be. So if you want to have a look at that and discuss it with me later on, that's fine.
Was there a question?
Next question. Janet? Janet's got the mic, so I'm going to follow her. As we do.
Andrew Dyer, the World Health Organisation states that people have the right to rest and repose in their own homes. This right's been removed from residents around wind farms and is the basis of most of the complaints sent to you. How many cases have you closed, including ours? Sorry, how many cases closed by you, including ours, have been to the satisfaction of the complainant? Have complainants been made aware that their cases have been closed? And how many wind farms have you forced to modify their operations to prevent further harm to residents?
That's a very detailed question. I'll be happy to take it offline. Sorry?
The answer's no. The answer's none, we know that.
Okay, well then you should answer the question.
Okay, none. No.
So I'm happy to provide that. That's a fair bit of detail. I'm happy to provide that offline.
You just like to hold through, please. We've had a local member for Holworth that has just arrived, Mr. Richard Reed, so welcome to you, Richard. Janet? Andy, you've got okay.
I'll have another question.
We've got.
I didn't get any of the questions actually answered.
No, too hard.
Can we have at least a response to some of the questions?
With a big contribution are you looking after the people or are you looking after the government?
Okay, we'll deal with that. Andy's going to ask a question and hopefully she'll get an answer.
Well, this is actually a deal on Andy Gardner, on the Carpet Wind Farm. This deals with the same issue. Given that the Wind Farm Commissioner's role is really to help resolve particularly health and noise impacts arising from proximity to wind turbines, my question I would appreciate answered in 3 sections. First, it is why have you been meeting with, apparently, and working with other Shire councils, ministerial staff, to alter the current law with the inclusion of possible specific clauses to remove exempt wind farm noise as a nuisance under the Victorian Public Health and Wellbeing Act? It would appear this has been going on behind everyone's back, inclusive of Moynshire and 2 others. I have a notice here sent to other shires outlining the concerns of the shires and by working to take away literally residents' rights under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act to wreck the only legislation capable of protecting rural Victorians.
We'll get an answer for that first.
We want to know why the
So Annie, good to see you, Annie. I assume you're referring to the Public Health and Wellbeing Act of Victoria. That has a provision for what's called noise nuisance.
Correct.
And it's important that's administered by councils. It's everything from nightclubs to people acting outside of hours with chainsaws and what have you. Some folks in Gippsland at the Hall Hills Wind Farm have filed a complaint of noise nuisance to the South Gippsland Shire.
As did Macarthur residents, the Moynshire.
Okay, I'm not aware of that one, Annie. The root issue there was that there was no procedure or policy at the Shire to in fact handle the complaint, and that's a gap in the council's governance. And so I would advise the council, the MAB and the Health Minister that there is a proper policy and procedure to receive and handle and address a complaint under the Noise Usage Provisions of the Public Health and Wellbeing Act of Victoria.
This was your idea, not the council's, or because the peers of the council's gathered together.
The Act is an Act of Parliament. The Act is an Act of Parliament. I don't think council's quite thought about how you dealt with the wind farm if someone made a noise nuisance complaint about wind farm under the Act.
Sorry, you don't think that's all about it?
No.
Oh. Well, what are the councils here for?
Well, councils often are the responsible. Hang on, councils are often the responsible authority for the wind farm for noise compliance with their planning permit. We heard from Tim. Noise nuisance under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act is a different way of raising a complaint and needs to have a process to deal with it. And councils, I don't think, have thought through that to date, and they need help to get that done.
So, is it true that the noise nuisance is being removed or claused into?
No, the Act is still there. You can make a complaint. You can make a complaint this afternoon under the Act, and council needs a process to receive that complaint and address that complaint properly.
Is there an Act before Parliament? We've been led to believe there is a bill in the upper house. Is this correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
Planning representatives tell us.
Yeah. No, not that we're aware of.
Covers that.
Right.
So neighbours can still issue a complaint of noise nuisance under the Victorian Public Health and Wellbeing Act.
Yes.
Is this correct?
Yep, absolutely.
Next.
Hi, I'm Susan Dennis. I thank the department people for coming down and telling us all about the wonderful process, but unfortunately in the real world it doesn't happen. I'd like to give the example of the Dundonald Wind Farm panel, which, as you rightly said, was called Environment Minister recently. In the pre-application process, when questions were first asked of the Environment Department, they were told that that wind farm would never get up. It was in an environmentally unsuitable area for a wind farm. But, of course, the wind farm company just persisted, and once they got a government in that they knew would pass it and didn't care about the environment, they pushed forward with the planning process. And then there was the problem, what do we do about this environmental sensitivity, particularly for the Brolga? Oh, I know, we won't have the Environment Department at the panel here. So this is an environmental effects statement, panel hearing, and the Environment Department do not make a submission. They do not appear at the panel hearing. Nobody can question them. Nobody has any idea about the environment. The paid consultants coming in telling us that their wind farm's fantastic. We have a few of us that are trying to support the environment, and of course that permit went ahead. It's an absolute disgrace. Now, as a result of that particular permit getting up, all the other wind farms in the area are now saying, well, what we do, if Dundonald's got a permit, we all can get a permit. In fact, it's stated in the Golden Plains application, Golden Plains directions hearing is on Friday, and they keep referring to the environmental consultant work in that, oh, well, this is much better than Dundonald. You know, this is a better deal than Dundonald. So now we've got the situation around Darlington, it's going to be the same as around Hawkesdale, where all these wind farms are going ahead, and I'm told there's going to be 10 transmission lines going into the Terang substation now. And this is the substation that's so bloody stubbed that one of the fires started there. And where is our landscape?
We'll get an answer from the department on that.
How are you going to protect the Brolga? Why is it just acceptable collateral damage to wipe the Brolga out?
In regards to the developed environment question, I suppose moving forward, developed environment is part of the Golden Plains ES/planning panel process, and will be part of the directions here on Friday, and also part of the panel hearing coming up at the end of July into August. I wasn't part of the process for Dundonald. I'm not sure what happened with that one.
The Environment Department was not told that they shouldn't attend. They didn't attend. That has been recognised by DELP, and they now are part of this process.
Excuse me, but the panel members repeatedly asked for a commission. They said it's not good enough. You actually read the panel report. The one that says it does mean is they've got a whole page blast of the fact that the Environment Department did not come in and they could not be informed, so they couldn't make a decision, so they could find where they get.
I understand that the panel did give that direction. Also, we do select, or the Minister requests certain areas of expertise to sit on panels, and they do include people with environmental expertise.
They're not Brolga experts. You say there's no Brolga experts there. This discussion the panel members had actually with the environmental consultant. Like, who is the person you are dealing with in Delta? No, it's not to be said, but you're not to acknowledge Brolga expert in your water right, but he's on the side of it. So now nobody knows anything.
My understanding is that the panel did investigate the issue around Brolgas and that ongoing monitoring is occurring. We can get back to you about who and how that will be addressed in Golden Plains.
So you're going to stop the looting?
No, I said to investigate and ensure there's expertise to assess the impact on Brolgas.
Sliced and diced. Sliced and diced.
I'm assuming you would like the role of an expert in the department.
I'll leave that to you.
Or an expert the department can go to.
I think it would be useful. The guy that I've been told to get in touch with openly says to me, I'm not a role expert, I'm a frog guy, I'll do what I can, but there's no role expert there, there's no one. And this is the bird, this is going to be wiped out. Nobody can start.
Yeah, if the question is how is DELP Environment going to, what expert advice or expertise is DELP Environment going to bring to the table in terms of Brolga to the Golden Plains hearing, we can take that question on notice.
But it's too late, but I'm not. What about what's happening at the car?
Okay, next question.
Why is it necessary to have Clonmel away from houses when the previous government put the distance 2 kilometres, especially when people are having problems with them?
Yeah, sorry, it's 2 issues. It's the 1 kilometre or it's the noise contour. So it's the 40 decibel, which is based on New Zealand standards.
I think the question was, why was the distance changed from 2 kilometres to 1?
And I'm sorry, I will have to take that on notice. I don't know why it was changed from 1 to 2, but I understand there is a noise decibel level that's based on the New Zealand standard, and that is.
Totally inadequate.
And I'm hearing that it's totally inadequate. We went to a property today, and sorry. So we'll take that on notice. I don't know why. I just know that that is the noise level that is seen as a reasonable level, and you can't have a wind farm that has an impact on more than 40 decibels to a home.
Why are you having to do 40 decibels?
Sorry?
Why are you having to
Wait, one at a time.
Sorry.
Why are you having to put them a kilometre away from the houses?
Because that was seen, I said that's the standard with the noise barrier, because the 40 decibel is seen as a reasonable, that's the benchmark that you can't exceed. Do you know why the 2 went, Andrew?
I'll tell you what I know. So there's 2. I'll tell you what I know to be helpful. Do you want to come up and answer the questions, or?
I'll give a more honest answer than what you're going to give.
Let the man speak. We're wasting valuable time.
Now, the 1 kilometre, as Tim accurately described, is a distance which, if you have a residence closer than 1 kilometre to a turbine, the proponent must negotiate an arrangement with that resident for the wind farm to proceed with that turbine. The actual distance between a turbine and a house, as Jane has said, is driven by the noise contour and the noise assessment. The coalition, Victoria, prior to 2011, had a setback distance of 0 kilometres for that first part of what I just said. The coalition government, which came to power at the end of 2010, introduced a 2 kilometre setback distance. The Labor Party, which came to power in 2014, took it back to 1 kilometre. To give you some points of reference, Western Australia is 1.5 kilometres, Queensland is 1.5 kilometres, New South Wales less than 2 kilometres. You need to do a series of assessments, particularly around visual amenity and noise.
You're the expert. Thank you. Next question.
Melissa Ware from Bridgewater. A High Court judge has made a ruling in the AAT that DBA measuring is useless at determining what's happening to those of us who have been impacted by noise, vibration and sensations. Stephen Cooper did a study down at Bridgewater and he's discovered a significant signature, turbine signature, and that's what's impacting people like me. And you lot are doing nothing about that.
Hear, hear.
I suppose the question would be, are you looking at the noise signature that Stephen Cooper has? Well, there is this noise signature. There's a lot to do with noise and infrasound, etc. Is the department looking at that, or you're just going on your 40 decibel plus or minus 5?
The noise standard isn't just a 40 decibel standard, it's based on the New Zealand noise standard, standard, which is quite a detailed noise standard, and there's quite a bit that goes into it. So that is the standard, and there's also noise expert anyway, that acoustician, that's the word, that needs to assess all the technical aspects of the standard. Yes, 40 decibels is the base limit, but there's also a 35 plus background noise. There's quite a bit of detail that goes into it. Yeah, so I can just say that the New Zealand standard has taken into account what experts have deemed appropriate in terms of noise from Winford, and that's how we assess it, and that's what it seems to assess it.
Alright, so to get changed, you have politicians in the room, get into the area to make changes. Okay, next, the man with the microphone. And then,
just very briefly, Stephen Cooper's report was brought in by Pacific Hydro. They brought him as an acoustics expert to look at the study, and he found that there were several places there that were just so unacceptable. He actually calls them infrasound, which is the really low noise ones that are just effective. But anyway, I've got a question for the Commissioner. I just read this today, basically. There's Hawkesdale is 1 kilometre distance to any existing building or whatever. Where I'm coming from, basically, with that socio-economic thing, I was a bit hot-headed there before, is that to expand Hawkesdale, we need to go that way. We can't go around there. It's all owned by the council and by Delaware or whatever. There's a farming area around here, and there's also an area of creek which can't be built on ever. So if ever Hawkesdale wants to be developed, it would be along the wind farmed area. I spoke to the Shire and I said if someone wanted to plan and permit at that 1 kilometre level, and I think there's 3 separate people who, for the last 10 years or so, have been trying to develop that area of town. The Shire has actually said that they want to make small towns more viable by getting them to develop, by getting more houses, getting more businesses in there. that's effectively going to stop it. But I read a very disconcerting piece of information from the wind farm, or through the wind farm commissioner today, in that that's all right for existing houses 1 kilometre away, but up to 1.5 kilometres or more, if you want to put a planning permit in from a wind farm, that's 1.5 or more, you have to go to the relevant authority, that's Moyne Shire, who will then speak to the wind farm that's appropriate to that particular area. So you then have to have the application to the wind farm to see if there's going to be effects on the property that you want to develop. So if you want to build a shed or a house 1.5 or more kilometres away, depending on what the wind farm says, it might be, I don't know, whether it's a visual thing, whether it's an impact thing, by whatever. So it's not 1 kilometre anymore, it's 1.5 kilometres or more away, which starts bringing me towards the middle of Hawkesdale, which means there will be no development in the town. Can you answer that?
Sure, you've hit a few different points there, so I'll try and work through them. Now, the intent around the 1.5 kilometres is to actually provide more flexibility to the resident that might be in that zone. So that if you wish to build a house, you've got to apply for planning permit anyway. And the council needs to consult with the wind farmers to make sure that that's okay. So if you want to build a 400 metre silo, 10 metres from the nearest turbine, there might be a problem there. But if you
that's not what it says. You're talking about a building or a shed. You're talking about a house or a shed, not a 400 metre silo. We're talking about something.
The intent was a residence. Now, if you wanted to build a residence, say, within 800 metres of a wind turbine, because you really wanted to do that, then as long as you understand the implications of that from a noise contour point of view, noise impact.
Now, you said 800 metres, but in your report it says 1.5 kilometres.
I say within 1.5 kilometres, you need to apply for a planning permit.
Yes.
And council may then refer that to the wind farm for comment.
Yes. So it's up to them to decide what's going on.
They could reasonably refuse a shed.
That's not what it says in that statement.
So, well, let me have a look at it. It's not clear. I can tweak that.
Okay, next question. The questions come.
Our house sits at 1.1 kilometres from the nearest turbine, and there's another 4 between 1.1 and 1.9 k's. Now, that's our home. That's where we decided to live and build our business. What are we going to do? What, do we just move out because the noise is too much for us? No one's came and seen us. What do we do? What do we do? We can hear the car park. They're over 10 k's away. Well, what are we going to do? 1.1 at 180 metres high, flickering in our lounge room of a morning. Can you explain? Can you help me? Because I actually don't know what to do. You've wrecked our lives. These wind farms are wrecking people's lives.
There's a couple down here, Janet, can you go behind, please? Ladies there. Very good. And this is the same here,
I would support it.
Talking about houses that are above 1 kilometre. What happens to those of us who are already living in houses that are 500 metres from turbines, I've got 680, need 4 under 1 kilometre near my house? What is going to happen to those who are already leading a life of misery? My house is worthless, I'm stuck. And I've complained. I have absolutely nothing to be done with it. And I'm sure there are other families who are in exactly the same position. While you're considering increasing to 1.5, what is going to happen to the dross that's already living closer to 1 kilometre?
Well, Sonia, thank you for the question. Now, your the Cape Bridgewater wind farm, of course, was permitted and full over any setback distances in Victoria, and that's why you're in a situation where your house is, I think, 600 metres from the nearest turbine. Now, the noise contour should still put your house outside 40 decibels, but that may not be still a comfortable situation for you. So I don't want to go into the detail of the work we've done together, but my advice to you would be to move out. And
let the bloody man finish what he wants to say. He has to say.
can I just deal with?
How can you stand there and say, how can you stand there and look at us and tell us to move out? And that is a legal sentence. Really, that is just absolutely cruel, absurd, and ridiculous. And how you managed to get an extension on your time as Commissioner, I cannot imagine. Hear, hear.
I'm an engineer who's concerned about the backup we have for the wind. The Mortlake Power Station, which is a simple cycle, produces only 2/3 of the energy it could from the gas that it uses. The wind farm only works 1/3 of the time. So why can't you just improve the method of extracting electricity from the gas, which can be done by putting in just a steam cycle on the exhaust, which improves the electricity by 50%. You could do away with wind farms altogether.
Yeah, look, I spoke to Jane earlier on and told her a few things about what we're going on. I've just got a query. I haven't been able to talk to Tim, but listen, we live probably 1.9 away from the MacArthur wind farm. The noise monitoring and the contour noise, or whatever it is, has got to be below 40. Now, ours broke down, our noise monitor broke down from July through to about August or September. Then they come and told me that no, they qualified, it wasn't a problem, so they just basically walked out our door. We've probably had 30 meetings with wind tower people, but the question I've got is that who's representing me? Like, I'm beside the biggest wind farm in Australia, right? I'm not bloody saying my dog's dying, I'm not saying anything else like that, I'm just saying it's bloody loud, right? Who's representing me? Because if I go to my council, my local council don't answer my calls, and I've never spoken to any of them, I don't know who they are, so I'm not a problem person, apart from Jim, of course. So, are the councils getting a quid out of this? Because if they're getting a quid out of it, what's the governance around this from my representation? That's a massive governance issue for me. If the person that's supposed to be representing my situation is pulling a quid out of it. Has anyone got an answer for that?
Well, we do collect rates, but the rating system is different for wind farms than it is for your property.
But you do get rates out of the wind farm people?
Yes.
On top of the rates we pay on our land?
Yes.
So there's a quid in it for you? And yet you guys, and I'm not even going to be personal, not at all, but you guys are representing me when it comes to my issues around the problems with the wind farm. Isn't this a massive issue that should be dealt with? Shouldn't we have representation outside of the council?
Well, Andrew can answer that because he's the wind farm commissioner.
So thank you, Eddie. You've hit on a very key point. Victoria has, in my view, a very ineffective governance arrangement for wind farm noise. It, in most cases, relies on councils with a compliance authority, which in the case of MacArthur is Moynashire. And councils, and Jim is probably not necessarily equipped to go and deal with those matters. And as back to Annie's question before, it's not dissimilar issues that we've had with the Noise and Nuisance Complaint under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act. In other jurisdictions, such as New South Wales, the compliance authority is the EPA, and the EPA is an independent council, and you do raise the point there of conflict of interest that can permeate in a wonderful situation. So my strong preference, and it's in my report, which for those of you that have studied the report, and a few of you have, is that in the state of Victoria, the compliance authority with the EPA, wind farms should be licensed to operate, and wind farms start to operate to their licensed conditions, they should be dealt with appropriately.
How long is that going to take?
Well, as I think Jim alluded to before, there's an election coming up at the moment. I've certainly lobbied very hard with the Planning Minister, the Environment Minister, and the Department on these topics. And I suggest you make the points known to your local member to take these matters up in Parliament.
Because you were out at Simon's this morning, weren't you? In the Delta team, Simon Cousins.
This afternoon, yes.
Yeah. You, what did you think out there? What did you people think out there at Simon's this afternoon about the noise? What did you think about the noise?
So I can hear it.
Can you hear everything?
I walked down their driveway just near their silo. There's a shed to the right-hand side.
What did you think?
I could hear it. I don't live with it every day, so I think for me it was like a slow hum. It wasn't really loud, it just was a constant hum. I understand from the work that... No, that's what I'm saying. I can't comment on the impact that noise has on you because I don't live and I don't sleep within the area. We report to, I don't want to be bureaucratic, but I do work for a bureaucracy. We report to a renewable energy task force. We've got a meeting tomorrow. The issue that Andrew has raised is if you have a complaint and you believe the noise is beyond, above the reasonable standard, what happens? Because now the process is that after 12 months, if it complies, then there isn't a clear process. So we're aware of the issue. We will report that up to the Minister. We believe, from a planning point of view, that this matter needs to be addressed because do I believe that? No, I don't believe that that's the solution. So at the moment, the solution we have in the planning system is about the level of noise that is deemed successful. I'm hearing really clearly from you that that's not working for you, both in a sense of the noise that you believe, whether it's 40 decibels or not, or if you believe it's more than that, I'm hearing really clearly that there's not a process that you think is reasonable to take on your concerns. After 12 months, currently, compliance is not dealt with adequately. So I'm hearing that. What we do as officers, and I'm not trying to be bureaucratic, but we make recommendations to the Minister. Clearly noise is an issue for you. We're hearing it very loudly.
Okay, next question. Yes, go right ahead.
Hello, I'm Pat Gabb. I'm from Stockyard Hill, and I started building our development, and we might not be able to live in our home. That's beside the point, just like Melissa and the other people. The key issue, you asked for a key issue, health and the destruction of birds and bats. But I want to speak about health, and I'll do it very quickly. I address this to Jane and your team and to Andrew. By your planning actions, wind developments, the residents in this hall and all the residents of the Western District will all be collateral damage due to health impacts. Stephen Cooper, Australian's acoustician, has just presented his latest paper in Europe with the results of his study of amplitude modulation, the up and down of sound waves created by wind turbines and the effect on people. He now has international standing, even though acousticians in Australia have banned him. What are you going to do with this study? This study is in my hand here. Do you know about this study? And if you don't know about this study, you better read this study. And how are you going to protect these people in this room and people who are already sick and people who will become ill? Thank you.
So the process is, as was explained by Tim, either if it goes through our planners, we take the information that's provided and submitted by people that make public submissions, and we assess that information. If it goes to a planning panel, again the same process has occurred. So we will review that. We will review that report when we're considering these applications. If we don't have the expertise in-house, we will get an expert acoustician. I'm not aware that Stephen Cooper has been banned. I'm not quite sure how that occurs. Yeah, so people can still make public submissions. I haven't heard of anyone in a planning panel or for us to ban taking on board someone's technical expertise. So from our point of view, he's not banned. But we consider the information that's put before us. That's what we will do.
I'll just jump in here and ask, if the report's out, why wouldn't you get a copy now and start to investigate what's in that report instead of waiting for a panel to appear and someone to produce it at a panel? Why wouldn't you take a 30 minutes? Okay. Yes, Jacinta.
I've just got a question for Tim. Tim, of the panel hearings for all the wind farms that you had up on the board before, how many of those were overturned when they went to a panel hearing? How many were defeated and
Do you mean by the panel or by the minister?
no, yeah. How many were stopped? How many wind farms were pulled when they went to a panel hearing?
So those wind farms that I showed up on the screen that went to panels, all of those wind farms were approved.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I attended the panel hearing for Ryan's Corner and Hawkesdale. It's completely loaded towards the government and the wind farms. We all had our say. The wind farms are there with their hotshot lawyers, you know, to intimidate you, and you just know you're going to get nowhere. It's a political issue, as far as I'm concerned, and we're just collateral damage. This is an agricultural area. It's heavily populated with people and families, and you actually have no place here. Enough, you know, obviously enough. Ben sat there from Wind Prospects at the last meeting at Willatook, and he said if there was enough opposition from the community, they would pull out. So how about you pull out?
In a sense, you're absolutely correct. The state government policy currently supports renewable energy. So when a planning panel considers a matter, it considers what's in the state planning policy in regards to renewable energy. Now, renewable energy is currently, we have a target. There is enormous concern by government that we're not going to meet that target and we're not going to be able to provide that. We're not going to be able to provide essential energy. Yeah, so if I can finish and then I'm happy for you to. So that is the priority of government, and decisions are made if it's in the planning scheme in accordance with those priorities. The issue of agricultural land, and I'm not talking about the issues you're raising about your personal health, for wind farms, I don't believe has a major impact on the agricultural functioning.
Yes, it does.
Well, you can explain that to me, but in terms of cattle and grazing, but then I'm happy to understand that. For solar farms, it's a different issue, and we have identified a very important piece of work that the state needs to do, which is to identify state significant agricultural land and to ensure in the planning scheme that is reflected. So I'm happy to take on board your issues in regards to how wind farms have an impact on agriculture. I'm sorry, I don't understand those. I'm just responding to the question. If you've got got some questions about the township, I'm happy to answer those.
You might think that we're opposed to renewable energy, that's not the case. No, it's just you're building it right here because of an economic benefit to you guys, because the infrastructure is already here. And it's just a money-saving thing, and we are just collateral, like someone mentioned before. You're not thinking about the people again. You know the infrastructure. It's put them somewhere else, but there is.
We're minimal people, you know, we've got millions of acres in Australia, people don't have it.
Yeah.
You know, I know it's going to cost more money, I know it's going to cost more money for infrastructure, but why is someone taking that lead in the government to build infrastructure somewhere else where people don't live? This is pathetic.
You're selling out our lives, people have to move.
Right, we have someone, where's the mic? Up the back.
My name's Barry.
Work your way around.
I've lived in Hawkesdale 16 years. I find it a quite peaceful place to live, good community, lots of beautiful birds. Someone just mentioned, why doesn't the infrastructure get built somewhere else? I come from the Wimmera, there's good power lines running through multiple paddocks with no one in it. That's just an instance of where you could do it. Plenty of places to go other than people. The question I want to raise is, I do have a real issue with sleep, and if I legislate my own bit of paper from a lawyer, would the company and the commissioner that push these wind farms on us be prepared to sign it if I lose sleep and end up in hospital at a rate of $10 billion? Because that's what you're talking, you're only talking money. You're not talking health. And your mates from Denmark who put those out there at MacArthur, you know, secret flying, come in, see you later, oh, it looks good. But don't expect it to pop up everywhere along this line because it's already mapped out all the way to Melbourne. Get real and look at the prospects. Now the good Lord, he said, treat thy neighbour as thyself. Turn the other cheek. If you keep going with it, I will give you that bit of paper and you must sign it, because if I lose sleep, I mean, that's what he's saying. The good Lord doesn't expect us to go to court about these sort of things, and that's what you're making us do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jim, I've actually got the microphone, so I've just got a question.
Yes.
Members of the community are concerned that Hawkesdale will no longer be a desirable place to live with the Hawkesdale wind farm development, that people will leave the town and people won't come into the town, and this will impact on school enrolments for the Hawkesdale P12 College. State government talks about job creation with wind farm developments, but should the Hawkesdale College close, there will be equivalent of 34 full-time teaching jobs lost, as well as the gardeners and tradespeople and everybody who support that school. My question is, what policies does state government have in place to protect communities from the potential negative impact of wind farm developments? State government. So change.
I think I might answer that and also partially answer a statement that was put to me by this gentleman a bit earlier. The first, one of the first questions you had, and it's probably to clarify something in my presentation, the technical reports, what needs to be submitted and what needs to be assessed aren't limited to what I had on the screen earlier. There is also the rest of the planning scheme which goes into different impacts on the local area, on the local economy and what's important to
Can I just interrupt
local
there for a
planning
moment
policy.
because I wasn't at that planning panel. Those reports are actually all paid for by the companies.
There you go. So, yeah, it was to answer that and also to answer your question on how are things assessed more broadly and what about the local community. So those things are addressed as part of the process. I just wanted to comment on that.
So there was no response from the companies at that planning panel meeting around the negative impact on communities. That was they addressed a lot of other issues, as you know, in relation to roads and flora and fauna and so forth. But there was no impact, no discussion around The community, impact on the community. There wasn't raised at all.
So that's a matter the community can raise at the panel, and unfortunately, but understandably, the panel's going to look for evidence base, and that's difficult if you've got a new wave of wind farms, so it's a new phenomenon. So will there be a loss to Hawkesdale? Well, you won't know until the wind farm's in place. So, I'm not trying to be funny, but the planning system is based on providing evidence. So, it is very reasonable and valid to raise these concerns in the panel, and it is a requirement of the panel to consider the social and economic impact of facilities when they're considering of the wind farm, when they're considering whether or not the wind farm should go ahead. I do understand it's difficult when you have highly technical reports put together by well-paid experts and how to actually respond to that. The objective is of the planning. Well, they are employed as experts, the panel's role is to provide a fair hearing for all people that present in that. Your experiences, my knowledge of and experience of Nick Wimbush, who chairs a number of those panels, is he does make an effort to make sure that people can be fairly heard.
Okay, thank you. Next.
I'm just wondering, I think one of the biggest flaws of the whole thing is that the developer comes into the area and it appoints its experts. And if you talk to wind farms all over Australia, they will use the same visual landscape experts, they will use the same environmental experts, they will use the same sound experts. Who does the testing for sound? Who did the initial testing for sound? Who made sure that they were within that New Zealand standard, which is supposed to be within 5 to 10 metres of the home, and was not? And we have proof of that, and nobody's ever checked that. Who then goes back to do the compliance testing? The wind farm and their paid puppets. We need independent people coming in, not paid by wind farms and not trained by wind farms to give them the answers that they want.
So that's one of the things we can say is now dealt with. So there's legislation, so an EPA recognised auditor will do those tests to ensure that there is independence rather than it being someone that's appointed by the wind farm.
Just to go further on that's a key issue that we uncovered early on. It's in section 5 of our report. Whether you would like to look at that in section 6, sorry. I had a huge concern with the fact that the proponent would select acoustician A to do the assessment and then bring the same guys back to the post-construction noise testing and confirm that they got it right. That's a bit like marking your own exam. So in Victoria now, we work very closely with Jane and her team. The new process is that you hire acoustician A to do the predictive noise assessment. You then get an independent EPA accredited auditor to audit that assessment to find any errors or mistakes in that report. You then build the wind farm, you then get a completely different acoustician to come back and do the post-construction noise testing, and that's then audited also by a separate auditor appointed by the EPA. When we piloted this program on a voluntary basis at a wind farm in Victoria recently, we discovered 19 turbines were not compliant through the audit process.
So what do you do with them?
The proponent either has to remove them, move them, or curtail them. Yes.
Okay, next question there, then.
G'day, Ricky Nicholson. I'm a Pacific Hydro industrial wind factory refugee. We've had to abandon our house 3.5 years. I was going to be short and sweet, but there's so many things I've got to answer. The wind farms, they get 650,000 per turbine per year. The poor old farm gets 10,000 and then has to pull them down at the end of the life. because what happens is Pacific Hydro, or who it is, they on-sell it and the next person doesn't have responsibility. So they'll be rusting all over the Western District for eternity. Our grandchildren are going to judge us harshly. But we're getting on to the 40 decibels. That's traffic noise. When they did the testing at our place, it was 16 decibels at night. So if you go 40 decibels, that's 3 times. It is almost deafening at night. It might sound much, but 40 decibels is a lot. Now, the turbines, they use rare earth minerals in their production for the magnets. That production results in more radioactive waste than the nuclear industry. How is that good for the environment? These turbines, they need 100% backup because at best they work 80% of the time, so they don't produce power, they don't reduce CO2, and all they do is, for us as taxpayers, $5 billion a year going to overseas companies who don't, that money doesn't even support us anymore. The Chinese are great at it because they invite us over there, they say, look at our wind turbines, do you want to buy one? Give us your coal so we can make it. These turbines that they've got spinning in the distance are not even connected to the grid. They're just spinning in the background, looking good, and then the rest of the world says, oh, isn't China great? We're building all these turbines. Yes, they're building them, but they're not going to sacrifice their prosperity for the Western will to produce these things that do not work. I don't know if I said I was an electrician, but I'm an ETU member for 30 years. I've worked in wind and I've worked in solar. At best, trickle charge. We should either use the coal that we're exporting overseas to 56 other countries or go nuclear. Because if you really want to,
okay, anyone else about it?
Just one quick question about good neighbour agreements. How is that going to protect people's health at less than 1.5 Ks?
Sorry, could I get you to repeat that question?
You are getting people to sign a good neighbour agreement if they live less than 1.5 kilometres from a wind turbine. How is that going to protect people's health?
The companies are offering compensation.
Right. Outside of the planning process. Because there's the 1 kilometre acceptance that you need for it to actually go ahead. Outside the planning process, we can't regulate confidential or commercial contracts between wind farm developers and neighbours. So that can't form part of our consideration because those are actually commercial in confidence. So, and it's not public information as well, so it's part of that.
In case you get swamped by everyone's questions. So any and tell them that the bank will call quick. We'll make sure you leave at 5:30. Drive from yourself.
My questions, Chris has covered most of them. The fraudulent noise testing took place at our home and many others around the wind farm. The guidelines say between 5 and 10 metres from the home. It was 35 metres from our home. Ours was one of the homes for compliance noise testing. And also, we, of course, apart from being by the council, residents employed an independent acoustician. We had our own assessment report, which just stripped off the whole of the compliance noise testing by pet acousticians from the wind industry, but we took it to our council on 2 occasions. After the first 12 months, or after commissioning it in the first 12 months, our council voted 6-1 against accepting the new assessment and questioning the compliance. Section 5.5, you talk of the New Zealand standard, says that nothing shall prevent further compliance testing being undertaken in the event that compliance has been determined, but complaints still continue. Now, complaints are still definitely continuing. I would like to ask perhaps the Commissioner to recommend that the wind farm developers comply with this parking permit and have an acquisition of the residents' individual choice to carry out this further compliance noise testing under section 5.5 of the standard. So that's one question. But
so we've got the answer to that one because we're running out of time. Ingrid, you want to answer that?
So Annie, just for Cody, that's in the New Zealand standard of the planning permit?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let me look at that.
That's section 5.5 on the
So you're right.
Okay.
Independent noise experts do
more
this.
compliant because how we said compliance off the go and everyone's having to move away. But one thing, sorry, in the guidelines there's nothing about low frequency noise or infrasound, and this is what is affecting most of us to the extent that we are sensitised when we go away from home, we're in a cafe with air conditioning or fans or freezers in the supermarket. Our symptoms come back because the impact is cumulative, and this is what Stephen Cooper has been discovering. He played the turbine signature for Cambridge Water. He had 10 sensitised people, of which 4 in this room were the only 4 wind farm people impacted in Australia. Others were gas, mining and whatever. And when he played this turbine signature, and it was double, the people taking part were double blindfolded, and the symptoms came back. So that's what his theory is, that the problem, the huge problem, is the amplitude modulation, but it is low frequency noise modulating at infrasound levels. So background noise, yes, it is the audible noise, but the low frequency noise that nobody can hear, but they can see, we hear it if we feel it in our chest, our heart, our ears, and this should be in the guidelines. There's nothing in the guidelines.
There's one question here in front there, and that's it. You're sorry.
Sorry, the woman in the black and red jacket next to you was going to tell me what the impact on agriculture was, that the wind farms were having a negative impact on the agricultural production of the region.
You just heard about the service fee before.
I think you just need to talk to all the farmers here. It impacts on animals.
Yeah.
It impacts on the farmer being able to go out there and work on the farm. A lot of there are vet reports of dogs who cannot work the sheep because of the effect of the wind, the infrasound on them. It's multiple. It is multiple. You think about killing all the birds and bats. What happens? They eat the insects. Our insects multiply.
We're running out of time. The gentleman right there has been waiting patiently. You, sir.
The majority of this community don't own any more wind turbines. And I was just wanting to know, would the planning minister be aware of that, and how much weight that carries?
Yeah, the planning minister would be aware of the number of objections that go to any application. He'd be aware through correspondence and letters that come in through members of parliament, constituents that write to their local MPs. And it is a part of what is considered as part of the application, and that's legislated. There's recent decisions through VCAT that have actually outlined that the number of objections should be counted in consideration, which is a bit of a new development in terms of the planning system, actually. So I'd say yes, definitely he is aware, and they are considered.
Okay. The gentleman up the back's been waiting patiently.
Yeah, Jim.
Speak up, mate.
Jim, you probably know. I've spoken to a few of these meetings. You know my view on wind farms, the health benefits, and the lady who was told to sell up and move on. The lady here that's worried about the flickering of the sunsets and all that. You've heard all that. All these learned people up the front who think they know everything. You've heard these people here today. There's been 2 positives come out of it. One from the electrician over there that told you to a different way how to do renewables, and one from the young engineer man over there who's got a great idea. There's no other positives to come out of it. Everything's negative. And you should realise that. You should get the feel of the meeting. Nobody wants you here. Go away.
So, thank you everyone. We'll call that time for question time. Just up the front here, as was alluded earlier from our young gentleman engineer, is some handouts. So please take one and read it. It's very interesting.